The air inside that courtroom felt thick, the kind of heaviness you notice the moment you step through the doors. A humid summer morning pressed against the windows, and every breath felt warm, tight, and uneasy. A 17-year-old black boy stood in the center of it all, shoulders tense, eyes forward, doing his best not to let anyone see the tremble in his hands. His name was Malik. He wasn't tall, he wasn't dressed in anything fancy, and he wasn't trying to look tough. He just stood there in that oversized brown suit his mother borrowed from a thrift shop, hoping it would help people take him seriously. But in this room, the eyes on him weren't looking for seriousness. They were looking for flaws dotted the bench. The judge barely raised his head. He skimmed paperwork like he'd already made up his mind, like Malik's entire life could be summed up in a few typed lines on a charge sheet. And right behind Malik, his mother sat with her purse clutched to her chest, whispering quiet little prayers she hoped would reach the ceiling before anyone's judgment did. Before I go any further, welcome. My name is Simmons, and this is Chronicles of Black. If you're here, I appreciate you. Make sure you subscribe, and drop a comment to tell me how you feel about this story, because what happens next will shake you. The judge finally looked up, and the first expression he offered wasn't curiosity or interest, it was annoyance. He sighed like Malik's presence was an inconvenience. His tone cut through the room, sharp enough that a few people turned their heads. He spoke to Malik as if he was already guilty, as if his fate had already been written long before he opened his mouth today. That's how it goes for boys like him. Folks act like they've got a script ready, like they know your story before you say a word. The judge leaned forward, asking Malik why he thought he had the right to represent himself. His words weren't real questions. They were jabs. They were meant to sting. He dragged each sentence out with sarcasm, making sure the entire courtroom heard every ounce of his doubt. The bailiffs exchanged smirks. A few people in the pews whispered to each other, like the spectacle was entertainment. None of them knew the truth about Malik. They didn't know how long he'd been preparing for this moment, or why he felt he had no other choice. All they saw was a teenager who looked like he didn't belong in a courtroom unless he was in cuffs. Malik swallowed hard, trying not to let the disrespect hit too deep. He felt his lungs tighten, but he kept breathing slow, steady breaths, the way his mother always taught him. Never meet anger with anger, she would say. Let your calm be louder. So he stood still, letting the judge's words wash over him without breaking his posture. The judge asked another sarcastic question, asking whether Malik even understood the meaning of the charges. He asked it loudly, like he expected a comedic answer. A soft laugh rolled through the courtroom. Malik's mother lowered her head, pressing her forehead into her hands. She hated when people talked to her son like that, but she also knew how quickly these moments could turn dangerous if he reacted wrong. Malik didn't react wrong. He kept his eyes steady, even as the judge tilted his head in exaggerated confusion. It was clear to everyone that this man wasn't just questioning Malik's choice. He was questioning his intelligence, his competence, his worth, the kind of judgment black boys get handed long before they even make a mistake. Inside, Malik felt that old frustration rising, that feeling of being dismissed before you even get the chance to prove yourself, the fear of being trapped in a room where every authority figure seems to be rooting against you, the disbelief that people can speak to you with this level of disrespect and then hide behind their title when you flinch. But mixed in with the frustration was something else, something steady and growing. Malik had walked into this courtroom afraid, but not unprepared, and every insult, every smirk, every assumption only pushed him closer to the moment he'd been waiting for. He lifted his chin slowly, intentionally. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't break into some dramatic speech. He simply spoke with a calm that didn't match the way the judge had been treating him. He said he had every right to represent himself, and he said he intended to proceed. The room froze. You could hear a piece of paper drop. You could hear someone inhale sharply in the back row. Even the bailiff stopped smirking for a second. The judge leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing as if he wasn't sure he heard correctly. He gave a small laugh, the annoyed kind, the kind that said, "This boy must be out of his mind." But Malik didn't look away. He wasn't backing down. This was the moment the judge realized Malik wasn't as easy to push as he thought. The tension shifted. Not enough to break the judge's arrogance, but enough to make him wary, enough to make everyone in that courtroom pay attention. And that is where this act leaves you. In the middle of a room full of people who underestimated the wrong kid, Malik had spoken his truth. The judge wasn't ready for what was coming next. And he sure wasn't ready for who Malik really was. Before Malik ever stood in that courtroom, before that judge ever looked down on him like he already knew his future, Malik's life had been shaped by sounds most people never get used to. In his neighborhood, police sirens were louder than school bells. They cut through the nights, echoing down cracked sidewalks and bouncing off apartment windows that never fully closed. You grow up quick in a place like that. You learn early what fear feels like. You learn it before you even understand why it follows you. His mother worked nights cleaning offices downtown. She would come home tired, her hands raw from bleach and rough surfaces, but she always tried to smile. Malik used to watch her slip off her shoes and rub her ankles, whispering that everything would be okay. Even when rent was late and the lights flickered, she never stopped believing in her kids. even when the world made it hard. Malik had an older brother named Devin. Devin was smart, funny, the type who could fix anything if you handed him a screwdriver and a little time. But the system didn't care about his potential the day he stood in front of a judge who treated him almost exactly the way Malik was being treated now. The judge back then talked down to Devin, lectured him, called him careless, made him feel like a disappointment. Devin never forgot it. Sometimes he still replayed the speech in his mind, as if the words were stains he could never wash off. Malik watched all of it. He watched how a courtroom stripped his brother down to the worst version of himself. And even as a kid, he understood something powerful. He understood the difference between justice and judgment. He understood how sometimes the people with the most authority see the least truth. But Malik wasn't like most kids. He didn't run from it. He didn't harden up or give in. Instead, he escaped into something people around him didn't expect. Books, not school books, not homework. Real books. Thick books with names and dates and cases most folks had never heard of. He found them in a dusty corner of the community center library, the place he went after school because it was safer than being outside. He'd sit cross-legged on the floor, flipping through pages about civil rights icons who fought battles way bigger than anything he'd faced. He read about lawyers who took on impossible cases and won. He studied protests, rulings, historical moments that changed the country one courtroom at a time. And slowly, he began to understand that knowledge was power. Real power. The kind nobody could take from him. Most kids his age were reading comic books. Malik was reading case law. He memorized courtroom procedures like they were lyrics to his favorite song. He could recite legal terms before he even hit middle school. And every time life pushed him, every time he saw someone in his neighborhood get pulled into a system that treated them like background noise, he only studied harder. Life forced him to grow up early. He watched friends lose hope long before they lost their chance. He watched neighbors get stopped for no reason other than fitting a description. He watched kids who were brilliant at something, music, math, drawing, get swallowed by a system that didn't care about their dreams. By 13, Malik made a promise to himself. He wanted to be a lawyer, not because it sounded impressive, not because someone told him he should, but because he'd seen too many people lose their future without anyone fighting for them. He didn't want to be the next one in line. He wanted to be the one who broke the line. But life has a way of testing people exactly when they find their path. The day everything changed, Malik wasn't doing anything wrong. He wasn't loud. He wasn't causing trouble. He was walking home from the corner store with a bag of chips and a notebook, full of case summaries he'd been rewriting for practice. A police car slowed beside him. An officer stepped out and started asking questions that didn't fit the moment. Questions Malik had heard kids in his neighborhood get asked 100 times before. The kind that make your heart pound even when you've done nothing. The stop escalated fast. Too fast. Malik tried to explain where he was going. The officer claimed Malik matched a description. Malik lifted his hands, confused, scared, trying to stay calm. But the officer grabbed him, shoved him, and when Malik stumbled back, the officer claimed Malik assaulted him. 1 second changed his whole life. Within minutes he was in handcuffs. He was 17. He had never been in trouble. Yet he was charged with resisting an officer. When he finally got home on bail, his mother cried so hard she couldn't form words. Devin punched a dent into the wall. Malik sat on the edge of the couch staring at his hands, wondering how just being himself could turn into danger so quickly. He asked for a court-appointed attorney because that's what he was told to do. But the system made him wait weeks, and when he finally met the man who was supposed to defend him, something felt wrong. The attorney kept checking his phone. He didn't remember Malik's name. He mixed up the details. He acted like this was another small case he'd forget as soon as it was over. Malik didn't feel protected. He felt invisible, and for the first time in his life he understood something deeper than books or case law. He understood that if he didn't take control of this, nobody would. That night, after the attorney left, Malik sat at the kitchen table with stacks of papers, books, and notes he'd written over the years. He stayed up until sunrise, reading everything again, methodically, determined. He read about defendants representing themselves. He read every law related to his charge. He studied every loophole, every precedent, every mistake officers had been caught making in similar cases. And by the time the sun came through the curtains, he made a decision that would change everything. He would represent himself, not because he thought it would make him look brave, not because he wanted attention, but because he had spent years preparing without even realizing it, and because he couldn't trust anyone else to fight for his future the way he needed. He walked into that courtroom knowing nobody believed in him, knowing people would judge him, knowing he'd face laughter and doubt. But he walked in anyway, carrying every lesson he'd ever learned, every late night spent studying, every moment life tried to tell him he wasn't enough. And as he stood there in front of that judge, trying to steady his breathing, he remembered all of it. The nights he memorized legal terms by flashlight, the afternoons he sat on the library floor reading until they closed, the promises he made to himself when he saw his brother mistreated, the silent hope that someday someone would see what he was capable of. He didn't know how the judge would respond. He didn't know how anyone would respond. He just knew he wasn't backing down. He was ready to be seen. The heavy wooden doors of the courtroom close with a thud, a sound Malik will remember for the rest of his life. Inside, time moves slow. Too slow, slow enough for every stare to cut him open. One glance at a time, Malik steps forward, wrists trembling just slightly, but not with fear, with restraint, with the kind of focus a young black boy learns too early in life, the discipline to stay calm when the world wants you broken. His mother sits behind him, hands clasped, knuckles pale. She's trying so hard not to cry, because she knows tears aren't allowed in rooms built to judge families like hers. The prosecutor leans back in his chair, smirking. His assistant chuckles under her breath, as if Malik's presence, his very existence, is some kind of inconvenience. And then the judge clears his throat, a tall, aging man with a robe worn like a crown he didn't earn. His glasses rest low on his nose as he looks Malik up and down, examining him like an item on a shelf. "Young man," the judge begins, voice dripping with disappointment he hasn't even justified yet. "Teenagers like you rarely understand the consequences of their actions." The courtroom air tightens. He's not talking to Malik. He's talking about him to the room, to the walls, to the system that already wrote the ending like Malik is a burden, a disruption, a case file with a pulse. The judge keeps going. Each sentence another quiet humiliation. "Frankly, I'm not sure why we're entertaining this. You're turning this court into a spectacle." Malik's mother dips her head. A single tear finally escapes. Silent, ashamed, tired. Generations of bias sit in that courtroom. Generations of boys who walked into these buildings as children and were sentenced as men. Generations of mothers who cried behind them because crying in front wasn't appropriate. Generations of prosecutors who laughed quietly, comfortable with the imbalance. And for a moment, Malik feels all of that. Every unspoken rule, every stereotype, every expectation of failure. But he does not flinch, not this time. He steps forward, raises his chin, and asks steady, respectful, unbroken, "Your Honor, may I proceed with my opening statement?" The judge scoffs, almost offended. "This court is not a place for experiments," he snaps. "You are not trained. You do not know procedure. Let's not waste everyone's time." The chuckles from the prosecution return soft, smug, predictable, but Malik doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't argue. He simply speaks calm as a seasoned attorney under Ferretta v. California. "I have the constitutional right to self-representation if I knowingly and intelligently waive counsel." Silence, not quiet silence, a kind of silence that shifts the energy in the room. Like gravity changing direction, the judge's eyes widen. The prosecutor sits up straighter. The laughter stops, mid-breath. Malik's mother covers her mouth, this time not to hide tears but to hold in her shock. No one expected this. Not clarity, not confidence, not accuracy. No one expected a young black teenager to stand in a courtroom and speak like someone who spent decades studying the system that tried to swallow him whole for the first time. The judge doesn't know what to say. And that is the turning point, because now the room realizes something they tried so hard to ignore. Malik is not a boy who wandered into trouble. He's a young man fighting to rewrite his own fate, and he's doing it in a place designed to silence him. The humiliation becomes power. The bias becomes fuel. And the courtroom, for the first time, listens. The courtroom is still. The same room that mocked Malik minutes ago now watches him like they're seeing him for the first time. Malik steps forward, legal pad in hand, voice steady, but gaining strength with every breath. He calls his first witness. "Officer Grayson," he says, not with fear, not with hesitation, but with a confidence that forces the entire courtroom to sit up straighter. The officer walks to the stand, broad shoulders, stiff posture, the kind of presence the system always trusts before it even hears the facts. Malik waits until the oath is sworn. Then he begins. At first, his voice is small, measured, careful, but with each question, it sharpens, strengthens, becomes something undeniable. "Officer, in your report you stated you approached me because I matched a description. Which description was that?" The officer shifts. He wasn't ready for precision. A young black male wearing Malik cuts him off gently, but with surgical timing, wearing a gray hoodie. Correct. Malik flips a page, but in the recording, your body cam clearly shows I was wearing a black t-shirt. Is that correct? The room shifts. A low murmur ripples through the gallery. The prosecutor moves to object, but Malik is already speaking. Objection response. This is impeachment through prior inconsistent statement. Fully admissible. The prosecutor freezes. He wasn't fast enough. The judge raises an eyebrow. Malik continues. He cites timestamps from the body cam footage as if he's memorized every frame. Because he has. He quotes the officer's own words word for word from the transcript he fought to access. Every line exposes another hole, another exaggeration, another assumption made before anyone asked Malik a single question. The bailiffs who laughed earlier aren't laughing now. People in the gallery lean forward, hands over mouths, eyes locked on Malik as if he's performing the most important cross-examination of the year. And then Malik changes everything. He takes a breath, a still, powerful, controlled breath. "Officer Grayson, you stated I assaulted you. Is that still your testimony?" The officer clears his throat. Yes, Malik nods, and reaches into his folder. This was the moment he fought weeks to be ready for. He lifts a piece of paper, turns it so the judge can see, then hands a copy to the clerk, a witness statement. From a woman named Dorothy Green, a neighbor who saw the entire incident from her porch. Malik reads. The boy never touched the officer. He raised his hands. The officer shoved him first. A wave of revelation wipes across the room. The judge's face stiffens. The prosecutor's confidence evaporates. The officer looks down, jaw tightening. Knowing the truth has finally been spoken aloud, Malik stands taller, not as a defendant, not as a boy under threat, but as the most prepared person in the room. A presence, a force, a mirror reflecting the system's failures back onto itself. The judge finally speaks, voice softer, almost uncertain. Mr. Harris, where did you learn all of this? Malik looks up, eyes steady, voice unbroken, tone deeper than his age should allow. I studied, Your Honor, because I was tired of watching people who look like me lose cases they should have won. I studied because nobody ever believed in them, and I decided to believe in myself. Silence again, but this time, not the silence of doubt, the silence of respect, of shock, of a system stunned by a boy it wanted to underestimate. And in that moment, Malik isn't just defending himself. He's defending every name, every story, every injustice that made this moment necessary. He becomes the truth the courtroom can no longer ignore. The courtroom holds its breath. But this time, the silence isn't heavy with suspicion. It isn't swollen with doubt or prejudice. It is the kind of silence reserved for moments when history, personal or generational, is being rewritten. The judge looks at Malik again, who really looks at him, not as a file number, not as a stereotype, but as a young mind far sharper, deeper, and more disciplined than anyone expected. He clears his throat, the papers on his desk. Suddenly feels small, insignificant, inadequate next to the truth Malik has laid bare. Mr. Harris, this court finds insufficient evidence to proceed. A pause, a breath. The case is dismissed. The words drop like a stone into still water, and the ripples are immediate. Malik's mother collapses into her hands, tears flowing faster than she can catch them. Her purse slips from her lap, but she doesn't care. Her son is free, her baby is free. The courtroom murmurs, but for once, no one is laughing, no one is smirking, no one is doubting. Even the prosecutor sits back, the fight gone from his posture. The judge leans forward, voice softer than anything we've heard from him. And I owe you something. Mr. Harris. Malik's eyebrows lift. An apology, the judge says, the word nearly foreign in a space that rarely offers them. He doesn't apologize for the system, he can't, but he apologizes for the way he spoke to Malik, for the way he assumed, for the way he dismissed a mind that deserved respect from the moment he walked in. And then, almost as if he's speaking to his own reflection, the judge adds, pursue the law. You have a gift, and the world, especially your world, needs it. Malik nods, a quiet promise forming behind his eyes. The narrator guides the audience through the weight of this moment, a moment black families have prayed for, fought for, marched for, a moment where truth is louder than bias, and brilliance outshines the shadows long cast over young black boys before they ever get the chance to show who they are. Malik walks out of the courtroom into the afternoon sun. His steps are calm, steady, full of the kind of freedom that feels almost unreal. He entered this building as a frightened kid defending himself against a charge that could have shaped his entire future. But he walks out as something else, something the world can't overlook anymore, a symbol of potential that grows even in the roughest soil. A reminder that genius can rise anywhere, even in neighborhoods the system has written off. The sunlight warms his face. Malik closes his eyes, and in that quiet brightness, he makes himself a promise. One day he will return to a courtroom, not standing before a judge, but standing beside a child who reminds him of himself, a child who needs someone to believe, a child who deserves a chance, a child he will fight for. Because Malik knows this truth now. He didn't just win his freedom today. He reclaimed his future. And he's ready to build something powerful with it. Sometimes a story like Malik's lingers in your mind long after the courtroom doors close. It stays with you because it speaks to something deeper than one case, one judge, or one mistake that nearly defined a young man's life. It speaks to the quiet battles so many black kids fight every single day. Battles that rarely make headlines but shape entire generations. Malik's courage reminds us that strength doesn't always shout. Sometimes it stands there with trembling hands, facing a world that refuses to see it for what it truly is. There are so many boys like him, walking into rooms where their skin is judged before their character ever has a chance to breathe. They learn early how heavy it feels to carry other people's assumptions, how exhausting it becomes to defend their innocence and their humanity at the same time. And yet, in the middle of all that pressure, something powerful happens. A spark forms, a determination grows, a belief takes root that says, I am more than what they think of me. Malik held on to that belief, even when the courtroom tried to strip it away. What happened in that room wasn't just a legal victory. It was a reminder of the brilliance that grows in places society likes to overlook. It was proof that resilience can bloom in young hearts who've been pushed to the edge. It showed that dignity can survive the weight of stereotypes, and that even a system built on bias can be forced to pause when the truth stands its ground. Moloch's voice became that truth. His courage called out the injustice that so many face but never get the chance to challenge. And as we sit with this story, as we replay those moments where he stood tall in front of people who doubted him, we're reminded that potential has no fixed address. It isn't limited by zip code, background, or the expectations placed on a young black boy walking into a courtroom alone. Potential is a force. It rises through concrete. It defies labels. It waits for someone brave enough to bring it forward. We share stories like this on Chronicles of Black because they matter. They shine a light on experiences many try to ignore, but that millions live with every day. They remind us that behind every statistic is a life full of dreams, challenges, and brilliance. They push us to question how many Maliks exist right now, sitting in classrooms, standing on street corners, walking into hearings, hoping the world will finally see them for who they are. And before this story closes, there's one truth worth saying again. Respect should never be earned through suffering. It should never be granted only when someone proves their intelligence, their calmness, or their innocence. Respect should begin the moment a human being stands before you, no matter their skin color, age, or circumstance. The courtroom learned that the hard way. The judge learned it when Malik spoke truth with steady breath, and the world keeps learning it, moment by moment, story by story. Greatness can rise from unexpected places. It always has. It always will. And whether the world is ready or not, brilliance like Malik's will keep pushing forward, breaking through, and rewriting the expectations placed on young black lives. Stories like his remind us why we must keep watching, keep listening, and keep speaking up. Because every time a voice like Malik's is heard, the world shifts a little closer to justice.